My name is Jeremy Devins, and welcome to the Yoga Teacher Training Podcast. And today I'm with one of my mentors, Angie Knight.
Hello.
So grateful to have you back. And
Thank you.
We've gotten a lot of awesome feedback on our first interview. It was over a year and a half ago, before all this pandemic stuff of 2020. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Is Angie had an interesting experience going through that, as I'm sure we all have in our own ways. But Angie is really coming out of the other side of that now and creating some amazing new offerings based on what she's learned. And we want to talk about that experience and just go right into it. So welcome.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's good to be here again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got so much great feedback of the first interview. Like, people reach out to us still regularly, like saying how much they appreciated it. So I'm really grateful to have you back here.
Yeah, another full circle moment.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the beginning of this circle now, of what got you here is what happened at the beginning of the pandemic for you? Like, what was your experience when we went from teaching? So actually, we have to go back a little bit further with that, because you were teaching in studio, you had a big following, and I was part of that. And then you started to move to having your own business. So let's talk about that transition first, how that happened.
Okay. Well, so as you know, I worked at the same studio for, 12 plus years. And that studio went away, and then we pivoted. That's my word of the last few years, is just pivot again. So my friend Lisa and I created another business, which was yoga related, and it was basically just renting out spaces and doing classes and events and retreats and stuff like that. And I was going to do a teacher training program in the fall when COVID happened. So that was all set up again. And then COVID and all that went belly up, all of it. So like many of us, I did not know how I was going to do anything. I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills or feed my kids, or and I was super, super, super anxious and scared and stressed, like everyone. But I think, as a single mom business owner, it was more than I could manage. With all the tools that I have, it was more than I could manage. So I don't know if I want to go into too much detail, but one day I couldn't breathe, and I was alone, and I couldn't breathe, and my chest hurt really bad, and I was like, am I having a heart attack? Like, I don't know what this is. And then I passed out. I got up and I passed out, and I came to, and my appendages were numb. And so anyways, I called 911, and they came, and I was having a panic attack. And I thought panic attacks were for people who didn't know how to breathe, and I teach breathing, and I was like, well, I wasn't ruminating before it happened, and it was very physiological, and they explained to me that it can happen from adrenal fatigue and stress or dehydration. It doesn't have to be worrisome thoughts, but it is very physiological. And so after that, I spent, a week just breathing because I was afraid it was going to happen again. And what's really cool that came out of that is that I had to become super discerning and super safeguard of my energy. Like, I didn't have much to give. And that was really helpful for me, because historically I give and give and give. And so I kind of reset my programming of shoulds, and was just like, in any given moment, do I have the energy for this? Is it coming back in? And that was my no and yes answers. But I think zooming out, the gift of it is that I surrendered, like, very early on. And, there was so many things that were out of our control. Right. So many things and so many layers. And I think because of that experience, I was like, oh, well, I might as well just let go. And I decided to kind of just go downstream rather than fighting. Right. And there was a lot of levels of fighting, in between people and in ourselves and in the world, because people were trying to make sense of things and be right, to know what to do, right? Right. So anyways, as a result, I just kind of decided I was going to go introvert, full on. other than when I was with my children. So I spent probably a year in solitude and in nature and got to rest, which was awesome. My son had asked me the year before, Mom, if you make $1 million, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to rest. And he's like, that's pathetic. So I was like, well, I didn't get the $1 million, but I got a pandemic and everything else, so I'm going to rest. Right. So I meditated a lot, and I just explored things that I had been teaching for years, but like didn't ever really have the space and the time to like go fully in.
Right.
So
interesting how you said, like, because I know you have so many tools and so much awareness and so much ability to practice all these things that we do in yoga, but it was like this thing that was like even bigger than that. Like even with all your tools, like still like this physiological response happened in your body, and there's like, and like you said, like the only thing you can really do is surrender in that moment. And that's just so interesting. Like, despite all the tools, all the experience, all the background, there's still like sometimes where there's still another layer of something that's like out of our control.
Yeah.
That like we couldn't plan for, we didn't expect, can't manage it. And it's still like this like new layer of surrender that you get to experience underneath that, right?
Yeah. When, at first I wanted to make sure it didn't happen. And I know about resistance, like it
Right.
increases things. I could feel it. When I didn't want it to happen, I could feel it. And so I was like, oh, I would go so far as to say I loved it. I loved my anxiety. I was like, okay, if it's here, I might as well love you. Right. You know me, I'm a freak like that. But I'm like, okay. And a lot of people got kind of upset about that. They were like, we've had these for 20 years. You can't love anxiety. That's toxic, whatever. And I'm like, well, if I don't, it gets worse. So I'm just going to let it be. And it ended up being a huge gift.
Wow.
Huge.
So you stopped fighting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then it changed?
Yeah, well, it taught me for a while. Like, it taught me, like, oh, this interaction isn't in harmony, or it's not reciprocal, or, and probably the biggest thing is that it taught me to tend to myself first.
Right.
Without guilt, without feeling selfish. Like, now I think selfish is a compliment. Because if we don't tend to ourselves, it's not an authentic giving for me.
Right.
And
those of you who don't know Angie as well, like she has 2 kids, amazing from what I know about them, and like taught all over Austin, and like big following, and like so always like this, and you're always leading like women's retreats and events and workshops, teacher trainings and mentorships over the years. So it was like a lot of output. There's always been a lot of output. And it sounds like this time is just this, you've given yourself this like surrender to just receive and be introverted, like you're saying, maybe the first time like to that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've incrementally been learning to care for myself, but I would say this was a pretty extreme like shift.
Yeah.
Even my kids, they were like, hey Mom, and I'm like, no, I don't, not right now. I have to tend to myself. You're going to go for another walk? And I'm like, then I'll listen to you when I get back. And it was a little bit of resistance around that, because as a mother, and really across the board, sacrifice is kind of taught that that's love, right? Or, if you have to work hard, or I'd go so far as to say suffer, that is merit worthy, right? It's pretty conditioned into us. And so, yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah, and there's always this idea like I deserve to, now I can take a break, or now I've worked so hard, now I can do this thing. Or even like if I get $1 million, then I can rest. It's like, what if you rest now? Then maybe the outcome will come anyway or not, but like the thing that you're sort of putting in between you and the outcome, you can just take away, right?
Yeah.
Take away the hard work, the effort, the sacrifice.
And it messes with your brain, because we've been told for so long, work harder, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I realized when I went downstream. I realized, first what happened is I went from like total anxiety to, after like a year, I can honestly say I felt the happiest that I've ever felt. And I don't know that I ever allowed myself to feel that happy or I thought, life was pretty much about helping people and getting through it and making the best of it.
Right.
But I really gave myself permission to feel how I want to feel. And then I realized, we've been doing it backwards. So I created this upcoming seminar. It's an hour and a half, so we won't be able to go into all of it, but just basically how we have been swimming upstream. So life feels like a struggle, and it feels like, whatever it feels like, it's hard. Whereas you can not resist life and flow downstream. And it's exactly what you said metaphorically, whereas like we think we have to work hard to feel happy, or we have to find the right partner to feel loved, or we have to make enough money to feel free, when really you can have the feeling without the thing.
Yeah.
And if you get the thing, you might temporarily have the feeling, but if you source it from that person or that thing, that's not the source.
Exactly.
And then you're upset or you're hurt or you're blaming when they're human or the job goes away or whatever. And then you're like, oh, I had it. And what I found was you can get to the feeling. If you can get to the feeling, and I've learned ways to help people do that, then you have the gold.
Right.
You have the gold. And then interestingly, the thing shows up almost every time, but you don't want to do it for the thing.
Right.
So I'm like learning the art of that, right? Because I like have something really amazing show up in my life, and I feel my old tendency to want to attribute it to that person or the thing, and then it gets wobbly.
Right.
So I got really steady, like pretty happy. I'm not saying like I didn't have bad days or I didn't have money, but whatever. I had things, but I learned how to go downstream, and how to pretty quickly go from stress to ease, or anxiety to something else.
Yeah. So what if somebody is listening to this now and like today or this week or recently, like feeling like they're going upstream and they're like just frustrated and feel like, well, I have to work harder to get to this thing. Then I can do this. I was a musician years ago before yoga, and there's a suffering artist archetype. It's like a lot of artists think it's like the more you suffer, the better your art will be. Mm-hmm. And that took me a long time to work around that one. But anybody who's like in that situation now where they feel like, but you don't understand, Angie, like I have to do this thing. Like I can't just have that. Like how do you navigate that? Like what do you do in a situation where you feel like you have to sacrifice or struggle or work hard, and somebody's stuck in that spot right now?
So I want to share a part of the webinar, and I'm trying to decide in this moment which part to share. So I don't want to give it all away. Well, I'm gonna talk about two different things. The one thing I would say first is to take on a new belief. And I found one belief that replaced all my limiting beliefs. And it took a while for me to believe it, but a belief is just a thought repeated over and over again. We think a belief is what's true for us. It's just programming. Yeah. And you can try on something else. So the belief that I replaced all the shit with was, I deserve to feel good. And I programmed myself like, oh, I deserve to feel good. Oh, life wants me to feel good. And I have all these general statements that help ease me back, because you can't go from anxiety to joy. Because if you're anxious and you try to go to joy, you're going to be aware of how far you are from it, and it creates resistance. Right. But you can lean, right? Oh, I deserve to feel good. Oh, it's totally okay that I feel sad and I feel anxious, but I do deserve to feel good. So it's okay. I just gave myself permission. I was raised in a religion that said, pleasure is sin, good is bad, feeling good is bad. Like, that's how messed up is that? Feeling good is good. Right. Feeling bad is okay. But, and so I just woke up every day and said, oh, I deserve to feel good, and gave myself permission to feel moments of ease or whatever, relief, or, and then I would look for proof of that, right? Normally we look for proof in how we feel. So I would say how I want to feel, like, okay, I deserve to feel good, or I want to feel trusting today, or I want to feel loved, right? I remember one day I woke up and I was like, I want to feel appreciated. But it was coming out of not feeling appreciated by my kids from the day before. And I realized, well, that's putting it in there, that's making them the source of me feeling appreciated. And so I just appreciated the heck out of myself all day. Took moments and just whatever, appreciated a body part or a piece of food, or I went and got, I just appreciated myself. And then I noticed that like life was appreciating me, whether it was the wind or a phone call, you know what I'm saying?
Right. So let's start with the smaller things, not with like the whole world belief of everything ever is like, I have to work hard, but start with the smaller beliefs of like, maybe I don't have to work hard in this situation, or maybe I don't have to struggle in this little situation. And then it starts to find the evidence of those things in the smaller things and the bigger things, and progressively bigger, something like this.
That's exactly it. And when you start to see the evidence, then you start to build trust and confidence. Like, it's taken me a while because my brain still says, Angie, you only worked for an hour today. You being lazy, girl. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I prioritize taking care of myself, actually for a couple hours in the day, but you could do it for 15 minutes.
Right.
And I do it before I do anything responsible. And that's really, but I like to experiment with things in a big way. You can do something really small. Like, one of my favorite things is, here's an example. So I developed some weird anxiety over snakes at the beginning of the pandemic. I was just looking for something to be anxious about. I do that from time to time. And so I was like, oh, snakes, because I had a puppy. And I was,
Oh, yeah.
I swear to you, 4 snakes in a week we came across. And this was in it wasn't high snake season.
Right.
And then I just started laughing. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm trying not to see snakes. And if you try not to feel anxious, you're going to be putting more energy towards the universe I'm attracting snakes.
Right.
I know that sounds crazy, but I was.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, I can't not think about not wanting to see snakes. And I was like, what if I just replaced it with something really lighthearted and it makes me smile? And I actually make myself say it in a cheesy voice. And so I was like, okay, feathers. And even my son, I'd be like, watch out for snakes. He'd be like, feathers. So we all got in on it, right? I have not seen, well, let me see if that's true. I don't think I've seen a snake since. And I am telling you, every time I see a feather, and feathers are everywhere, by the way, and now they're multiplying. Like, I started seeing feathers everywhere, and every time I did, I appreciated it, and I laughed, and I said, thank you for the reminder. Everything's okay. We have this power of focus, right? And so now, if I'm going for a walk, and I see a feather, I notice, I was just having a negative thought. And the universe is like, oh, hey, why are you doing that to yourself? And it's so fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to be intentional with what we choose to fixate on or focus on or put our attention on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm aware of that myself. And I got really into looking at people doing van life. Have you seen they take
van life?
Take a van and turn it into an apartment basically, and all these cool little compartments and things, and they travel. And it's just really interesting to see how they do it, and so much interesting thought process goes into it. They're so creative. And I just started watching a bunch of YouTube videos like that. And now everywhere I go, every day I see vans everywhere. And it's I swear I walk down the same street every day. I don't see that van. It's parked out there every day now. And,
you're attracting vans.
Right. And I'm watching these videos. I'm like, how small is that? I want to stand in and to really get a feel for what it's like in there. And then there's one just drives right by me, So,
have you met van people yet?
No.
That's going to be the next stage.
I feel like this one van I keep seeing, it probably is somebody, you can't see what's happening inside it. So I'm are they living in that van? I'm wondering if I'm going to see them come out and then see their, it's maybe somebody I watched on YouTube or something. But yeah, it's that same idea of I'm do I really want to be focusing on vans though? I don't know.
Well, you have no resistance to vans, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So that's the perfect thing to start with. There's nothing in you that says, oh, I really want to see a van, and if I don't see a van, my life's going to be worse. Right? So you're open to it.
Yeah.
So that's the perfect thing. And then you're like, okay, well, maybe I want to be more deliberate about this.
Right. It's maybe I should be looking at $1 million houses.
Yeah.
And see what happens then.
Totally.
So yeah, it's just that being aware of how quickly that attraction can. So that's only a week ago I started watching these videos.
Oh.
And then the next couple of days I started seeing them everywhere. So
that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
So no resistance though. I like how you said that. It's there's no value to it. It's just interesting.
Yeah. something you would like to see, but you're not going to care if you don't see
Exactly.
it, you know?
And there it is. It's like fun.
Totally. That's it.
So something that I think a lot of people listening might like to see is the upcoming webinar event you're doing online. So what are some of the details about that? Like, when is it? Where is it?
Logistically.
Yeah.
So it's called Flowing Downstream, and it is Thursday, August 5th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And it'll be like an hour and 10 minutes of interactive workshop. So I want everybody to bring like a notepad, and then we're going to finish with 20 minutes of restorative
Sweet.
yoga so that people can experience a sense of ease and non-resistance. And that's a key way to do that. So, but I think maybe people that would benefit from it would be if there's something in your life that isn't going the way you want it to go, or if you feel stressed about certain aspects of your life, or you want to learn to go from stress to ease fairly quickly, and how to like create or bring in or attract, that's the word, how to attract vans or feathers or money or levers or whatever it is that you want. And we'll touch on that. And then the one thing, actually I'll give 2 basic tools, like how to start your day off 15 minutes every day to pave the way so that you can attract what you want. And I did it every day for, I don't know, now a year and a half. And it's super simple, and it gets to be where it's fun, where I look forward to doing it. It's not a chore. And then the one thing that I think we must do every day to return to our natural state of well-being, which is who we really are. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So yeah, wanting to get into that state of allowing and getting out of the state of resisting, have to, should,
Try harder,
work harder, sacrifice more, right? And then getting into that allowing, easeful space. Restorative yoga, if anyone here watching or listening hasn't done that, it's just the best. And Angie's an amazing teacher of restorative yoga, so I'd go to the workshop just for that. But yeah, you can't do too much of that. So that's really cool. I love that.
yeah.
Yeah, and then where can people sign up for this again?
They can go to angieknightyoga.com with the K, and there's a little banner at the top, or we'll probably put a link
On the show notes?
on the show notes.
Yep. And you can also see on their website, she does teacher trainings. I'll be teaching part of it with her, small part, teaching some of the anatomy inside of teacher training as well. So that'll be really fun. We've done that in the past, and it's really cool. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
That's a virtual training.
Yeah.
In the
all
fall.
Online.
Jeremy's the anatomy guy, because I'm not.
Yeah. So that'll be really fun. So yeah, any other last things you want to share about your experience or realizations through COVID, or what people can look forward to in the workshop? Anything else you want to share before we finish up?
Well, the one thing I learned personally is that, we're taught that we need a plan, and everybody was trying to come up with plans for every new layer of chaos that came. But I think the but real safety is in the present. And for sure, I know it's where we're our most guided and empowered and loving selves. So I just think practices that either stop the momentum of our minds or practices that restart us. So I'm looking forward to sharing that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And actually, so I've thought about this a lot. I want to share just one last thing. So when we were doing the mentorship thing, I would go to Angie's class as like an observer and like kind of sit in the background and take notes or learn things. And one of the things I was doing when I was first observing was like trying to figure out like your plan, essentially, of like writing down every pose you did and things you said. And then you're just like, stop, don't do that.
Oh, I said that?
Something like that. Just like, don't do that.
There is no plan, Jeremy. You could take notes for 1,000 years. Oh, but I see what you're tying that into.
Yeah. So I, basically set the notes aside and just was present instead in the class. And I feel like I picked up more just by being there, just being in the class. than trying to really figure out the class or understand the class. And I appreciate that. And I think that you have a gift in doing that, sort of transmitting that presence and teaching through that.
Well, I think what that is our hearts. I mean, not literally, but like when you're in present time, right, you're connected to the heart of all things, but your own inner knowing, right, which is the why, and this is all the hows.
Right.
And then you can receive the hows, like moment by moment, so that you're just co-creating rather than like trying to create.
Right.
You know, and you know this probably as a musician, there's a difference between trying to make music or art or life and receiving it.
Right.
Right?
Sounds a lot better when it's received.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's, as a teacher too, I stopped like planning everything out and just show up. And I still, now I talk to newer teachers and they're like, how do I memorize sequences? How do I plan to teach a class? You know, and essentially, like I always think back to that experience of being in your class, writing everything down, and just, you don't. Ultimately, you don't, because that takes you out of the present moment.
It does.
It takes you out of really feeling what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's where the magic is. That's where the experience really happens.
So you think from the get-go? Because I remember I planned out everything for years, and I would like do the sequence. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? Before I felt comfortable enough to let go of the plan, because I needed something in case I froze up. But I wonder if I had made that leap earlier, if I actually didn't need that. I don't know.
I was like 3 years into teaching when we did that, and I fully stopped. Just let it go. So yeah, it took me at least that long. But I had like spreadsheets, notes, everything.
I don't remember me saying, Jeremy, put it away.
Something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but the energy was like, you don't need that. And I'm glad that you did that. So thank you. But thank you all for joining us and being here. And thank you, Angie, for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.